Okay, good afternoon, friends. So we had a first class yesterday, 3 to 4 p.m., wherein we discussed about plant and water relations. So for the benefit of the people who missed yesterday's class, I'll give a brief account that has been covered yesterday. So we discussed about the importance of water as the life, and because protoplasm contains more than 80% of its constituent as water, and various carbohydrates, sugars, proteins, enzymes are present in the protoplasm in a dissolved condition, making it viscous or colloidal in nature. Now regarding the water, because it is considered as a universal solvent, and water is very important. And in yesterday's class, we discussed about the concept of water potential. We discussed about the meaning and importance of osmosis. We also discussed about the importance of plasmolysis. We discussed about the concept of imbibition, and how imbibition varies uh, from from one seed to other seed based on its chemistry. And we also discussed about the absorption, the method of absorption of water, that is through apoplast and symplast ways. We also discussed about the ascent of sap, that is roots absorb water, and what is the function of root is to absorb water and minerals and to send it to the other areas of the plant body, that is especially to the tip, that is to the stem, to the leaf, to the flowers, fruits, etc. So this movement of water upwards against the gravitational force is what is called ascent of sap. We discussed about you know how ascent of sap takes place, and when it comes to herbs or small plants, the ascent is not a problem, but the ascent becomes a problem wherein the plant body is very lengthy, that is in tall trees like redwoods of California, which run 50 to 100 meters high or so. In such a cases, no a lot of energy is needed to send water to the tip of the plant body. And for this, in plant, of course, there is no engine as such, but it is the chemistry, it is the physics and chemistry of the water molecules, and the attraction that is present in between water molecules, and the attraction between the water molecule and the cell wall of the xylem, xylary elements, and the maintenance of continuous water column, and the sucking or the pulling of water under transpirational pull. These all together are responsible for sending water to the top of a tree. We also discussed about the phenomenon of transpiration. Only 2% or around 2 to 2.5% of water that has been absorbed with the plant will be utilized for various metabolic processes that take place in a plant body, but the rest is mere loss. The loss of water in the form of water vapor through stomata and other natural openings is called transpiration. And of course, in transpiration, this transpiration occurs through stomata. We discussed about the structure of stomata and how the stomata of a dicot leaf and a monocot leaf differ, and the mechanism of opening and closing of stomata. This is very important as far as your examination is concerned. And we have seen, the opening and closing of the stomata, that is especially the movement of, God cells. God cells, which are, which have the cell wall towards the stoma, or the stomatal opening is a bit thick, and the peripheral areas it is very thin, and some because of its elasticity, when the God cells become turgid, they extend outwards and thus resulting in the opening of the stomata. This we call opening. And this opening and closing of the stomata is because of the influx and efflux of various ions, especially the potassium ion, the malate ion, the chloride ions, and the protons. They are responsible for opening and closing of the stomata. This we discussed in our yesterday's class, and today's class we'll discuss about mineral nutrition. Plants, of course, all living beings. They can be primarily classified into two groups, two categories. One is autotrophs, the other is heterotrophs. Of course, plants fall under what we call autotrophs, but of course, not all plants. But there are certain plants which do what we call heterotrophic or parasitic mode or saprophytic mode. Good example for that is our fungi. Now, except fungi and parasitic plants, all chlorophyll containing plants do photosynthesis and they prepare their own food material, hence fall under autotrophs. Unlike this, in all animals are heterotrophs. They depend on plant products for their nutrition. Now, coming to plants, they prepare, I told you, they prepare their own food through what we call photosynthesis by using light energy or radiant energy, and the chlorophyll molecule that is responsible for absorbing this radiant energy and convert this radiant energy into chemical energy. This conversion of radiant energy or conversion of light energy into chemical energy is what we call photosynthesis, which is an anabolic process. And on this photosynthesis only, or on photosynthetes only, the entire living kingdom, all living beings directly or indirectly depend on these photosynthetes. Okay, so now autotrophs, I told you, plants are autotrophs, they prepare their own food material. Now, how do they do that? What do they need for doing photosynthesis? Various raw materials are needed for the photosynthesis. The important raw materials are, for example, they get their raw materials from atmosphere and also from the soil. From atmosphere, they get what we call carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The rest of the nutrients, rest of the elements, they derive from soil. Especially as the root system absorbs water, along with water, it also absorbs various nutrients that are present in the dissolved condition in the soil. It is the root hairs or mycorrhizal association that help in the absorption of water and also minerals. So now these minerals, what we call, so absorption of various, raw materials from the surroundings, and ultimately doing various metabolic activities resulting in the growth and development of a plant body. This is what we call nutrition. This is called nutrition. As in the nutrition, the plants absorbs various elements from the soil, and in the soil they are derived from various minerals. Hence, this nutrition can also be called mineral nutrition. So, for nutrition, they are absorbing or they are getting their requirements from the minerals. So, in the minerals, various elements, various important elements are present in a combined way, and later on, because of their dissolution in the water, they dissociate into what we call various ions, and in the form of ions, either in the form of cation or in an anion, the root ultimately makes an absorption, and after absorbing them, it sends from or from the higher concentration to lower concentration, or from the root system to the other systems of the plant body, they are being sent. So this is what we call nutrition. So the absorption of various raw materials is nutrition. And as these nutrients are derived from minerals, hence we call this as a mineral nutrition. Now, uh, of course, if you observe, if you burn a plant body, so here what we do is, if you burn, if you expose a plant body to higher temperatures of 80 or 90, what happens? Whatever the water that is there in it, it gets lost, it gets evaporated, and the mass, that black mass what you get is it is a dry matter. And if this dry matter, if it is exposed to very high temperatures of uh, as high as 600 to 700 degrees centigrade, this black material ultimately reduces to what we call ash. Now, by using various, you know, various spectrophotometers, and scientists, especially the chemists, were able to analyze this ash analysis, and ultimately they found that there are in a plant body, there are around 80 elements. In periodic table, we have, 104 or 106 elements. Though 104 or 106 elements are there in the plant body, scientists were able to, biochemists and chemists were able to find some 80 elements in the plant body. Now, a question comes to your mind. Do all these 80 odd elements that are present in the plant body are needed for the plant body or for the healthy growth of the plant body? No. So for this, determining which are essential, number of people have done a lot of experiments on this, and especially the credit goes to Arnon and Stout, two American biochemists, two American plant physiologists. They were able to tell, they gave a criterion. So mere presence of 80 odd elements in the plant body doesn't show that all are needed. So some, when a plant absorbs nutrients along with essential nutrients, even some unessential, unwanted nutrients also make an entry into the plant body, that they remain in the plant body. So mere presence does not tell that they are essential for the healthy growth and development and reproduction of the plant. So it was Arnon and Stout, American physiologists, they gave a criterion. They put forth 3 principles to determine which element has to be considered as an essential element. So they gave 3 principles. This is also very important for you under short notes. The criterion, Arnon and Stout's criterion of essentiality. What do you mean by that? So criterion of essentiality, they gave 3 postulates or principles. Based on that, a given element can be taken as an essential element or non-essential element. So to be called as an essential element, one first postulate or first principle is that in its absence, if a given element is absent, that should affect the healthy growth, reproduction of the plant body. In its absence, the plant should suffer from growth and reproduction. Then you can take that element as essential element. The second postulate says that an element which is considered as a specific essential element, its absence should not be replaced by another element. If some element is absent, if you are able to compensate that element by giving another element, means the first element doesn't fall under the criterion of essentiality. It doesn't become an essential element. So an essential element is such that it is irreplaceable. It cannot be compensated. It cannot be replaceable. The third postulate is that an essential element must and should become a part of the important biochemical compound in the plant body. It should form as a constituent of important compound in the plant body. So like this, if any element that satisfies these criterion are called essential elements. So after doing all these experimentation, Ornan and Stout, they put forth that in all, though there are 80 elements, only 16 elements fall under the criterion of essential category. Now, these 16 elements are called essential elements or essential nutrients. Now, of these 16 elements, some are required in large quantities and some are required in little quantity. So the elements that are needed by the plant in large quantity are called macronutrients. They are called macronutrients, and the elements that are needed in least concentrations, very little, they are called micronutrients. So like this, nutrients, essential nutrients are divided into two categories based on the amount that are uh, uh, the amount in which they are needed for the healthy growth and reproduction of a plant. So macro means maximum, large. Micro means small. If they are needed in small quantity, we call micronutrients. If they are needed in large quantity, we call them as macronutrients. Now, these macronutrients, there are 9 elements which fall under the category of macronutrients. They are carbon, you have to by heart them, 9 and 7. In all, 16. But of course, recently one more element has been added, that is nickel. In 1987, recently, it was Brown. It was Dixon, Brown, and other people, after doing a lot of experimentation in cow pee, they have finally concluded that nickel is also needed in a small content. So it falls under what we call macronutrients. So like this, macronutrients are 9, whereas micronutrients are 8. In all, there are 17 essential nutrients. So first of all, we study about the importance of macronutrients and how they are absorbed by the plant body, and in what way, what are the various biochemical activities, or what are the various metabolic activities where they play an important role, and if such a nutrient is absent, how it is going to affect the health of the plant, reproduction of the plant. If in its absence, what type of disease it causes, what type of symptoms it gives on the plant. We'll study now. So now, the first macronutrients are 9. One is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And I'll tell you how to remember. Easy way of remembering. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. These 3 elements plant gets from atmosphere or from water. The other 6, that is NPK, our what we call chemical fertilizers, nitrogen fertilizers, phosphatic fertilizers, and potassic fertilizers, NPK. So this is how you have to remember NPK. And the last 3 are calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. So these 9 elements fall under the category of what we call macronutrients. Now we'll study one by one. To begin with, nitrogen. Now nitrogen is very, very essential. Nitrogen is say for carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Generally, plant doesn't suffer from the deficiency of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They are present, naturally present. Mostly it gets its carbon through carbon dioxide that is present in the atmosphere. Now there is no dearth of carbon dioxide. Nowadays, the concentration of carbon dioxide is going up, and it is leading to what we call, greenhouse gases. The increase in temperature or increase in pollution, atmospheric pollution, is because of the burning, indiscriminate burning of fossil fuels. So a lot of carbon dioxide is there in the atmosphere. So also hydrogen and oxygen is there. Hydrogen and oxygen, these two make what we call H2O. In H2O, we have hydrogen and oxygen. So plant never suffers from deficiency of this carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. You leave them. Then the other are NPK. So nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. To begin with nitrogen, nitrogen is present. Where is nitrogen? What is the where nitro plants get their nitrogen requirements? See, though nitrogen is present in the atmosphere, 78% of atmosphere has nitrogen as an important constituent. Though nitrogen is present in such a large quantity, but plants suffer from nitrogen deficiency. Why? Because the atmospheric nitrogen cannot be utilized by plants. Only there are microscopic organisms, prokaryotes, such as blue-green algae and bacteria, rhizobium like Clostridium like bacteria. They have the ability to fix this nitrogen, to convert this atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates. That what we call nitrogen fixation. So though nitrogen is present in a large quantity in atmosphere, but it is not in the available form. Plants get their nitrogen requirement only from the soil. So the nitrogen makes an entry into the plant in the form of nitrates or ammonium salts or nitrites. These are the three forms in which plant gets its nitrogen from the soil. So now nitrogen is very, very essential. Almost all the important biomolecules have nitrogen as an important constituent. Our nucleic acids, your DNA, RNA, your amino acids, proteins, your vitamins, enzymes, all of them have nitrogen as an important constituent. Your hormones, auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, all of them have nitrogen as an important constituent. So importance of nitrogen is rather very difficult to explain. For each and everything, nitrogen is needed. Hence, plants suffer from nitrogen deficiency because nitrogen is needed on a large quantity. If plant suffers from nitrogen deficiency, it shows its symptoms. Generally, where do you find symptoms? See, for example, you and me. Where do symptoms? If you go to a doctor, just by looking at you, looking at your skin, looking at your eyes, looking at your tongue, doctor will tell you what type of deficiency you are suffering from, what type of ailment you are suffering from, what type of by looking at you. Face is the index of mind. So here in plant body also, just we can, if you're looking at a crop, so we confine whenever we speak of that, our aim is to look at crops, our food crops. So if you look at a given crop, the healthy crop, it grows well, and the leaves, the foliage leaves are green in color, and you will see when there is a breeze, they'll move to and fro, and they grow well. They flower, fruiting, and yield will be more. But if plant suffers from, if crop doesn't get required quantity of nitrogen, it shows symptoms. What is the important symptom? So I told you, hale and healthy leaf is green in color. Now, if crop suffers from nitrogen deficiency, the leaves become yellowish. Turning into yellow is called chlorosis. Instead of green in color, they become yellowish. This we call chlorosis. So if plant suffers from nitrogen deficiency, growth gets affected. The plant shows what a stunted growth, delay in flowering, delay in fruiting, even the yield gets reduced. So this is how. Now, where do you find the symptoms? First symptoms. Generally, first symptoms are seen in old leaves because nitrogen is a mobile element. It moves from the older leaves to the younger leaves. So hence, you will see the symptoms in the older leaves. Okay. So then we move to what we call phosphorus. The second element, important element is phosphorus. Phosphorus is also another very, very important element. Now, the importance of phosphorus, same nucleic acids, purines, pyrimidines, the nitrogen bases, two nitrogen bases are linked to phosphate. Phosphodiester bonds are there. Phosphate is an important constituent of coenzymes, NADP, NAD, NADP, ATP, ADP. All of them have, phosphorus an important constituent. So phosphorus is very, very important for the healthy growth and the production of the plant. Now, generally, phosphate will be observed in phosphate ion. In the form of phosphate ion, plants absorb phosphate ion through root hairs. Now, when a plant suffers from phosphorus, the difference, generally nitrogen we have seen, leaves become yellowish, chlorosis. But in contrast to that, the plant suffers from phosphorus, they become dark green. Leaves become dark green, but it shows healthy growth will not be there. Delayed flowering will be there. Yield gets affected. And in some cases, because it is also an important constituent, nitrogen, both nitrogen and phosphorus, they are present in the chlorophyll. The chlorophyll molecule has nitrogen and also phosphorus. So when nitrogen and phosphorus are lacking or not present in sufficient amount, means in place of chlorophyll, the pigmentation takes place. That is, anthocyanin pigments will be seen. So you will see purple color spots are seen in the intervenal areas, or even on the lower side, especially in case of jowar, in case of maize, in case of tomato leaves, especially on the lower side of the leaf, you will see these purplish spots. So presence of purplish spots and dark green color and stunted growth denotes that the crop or the plant is suffering from phosphate deficiency. Okay, now we move to after nitrogen, phosphorus, what is the other element? Potash. Now potash is absorbed in the form of K plus ion, cation. In the form of cation, potassium will be absorbed by the plant through its root system. Generally, in our soils, especially in black cotton soils, the plants do not suffer from potash. But generally in alkaline areas, generally the potassic deficiency is seen. Especially potassium is very, very important in tobacco and other crops. So here, the potash. So unlike your nitrogen and phosphorus, potassium is not an important constituent of any biomolecule. But potassium has been found to be acting as a cofactor, coactivator for 40 odd enzymes. It acts as an activator for 40 odd enzymes. In the absence of potash, generally the enzymatic activity gets reduced and there is a reduction in various metabolic activities, especially when potassium is absent, generally various biochemical reactions, especially the transfer of what we call, pyruvic kinase and phosphofructokinase, pyruvic kinase gets affected. If they get affected, generally you synthesis or various life processes, especially life processes of photosynthesis and also respiration get affected. So in addition to this, we have seen, in yesterday's class, I told you the opening and closing of stomata is influx of potassium ions into the God cells are responsible for opening of the stomata. Efflux of the potassium ions in the evening is responsible for closing of the stomata. So potassium is also very, very important because it is essential for 40 odd elements, acts as an activator, and also it is essential for various enzymatic activities, and also for protein synthesis, and also for amino acids synthesis. The potassium ion is very, very important. So hence the potassium is lacking or not present in required quantity. Generally plant develops white patches. So here and there on the leaf lamina, you see certain white patches, and even in the stem or in the culm, you will see the pith part, the pith part, there is a degeneration of pith tissue. So thereby the plant becomes weak and there is every possibility for the lodging of the crop. So this is how both NPK are very, very essential. So then we move to the other important element, that is sulfur. Sulfur is also very, very essential, and sulfur is absorbed in the form of sulfate ion. In the form of sulfate ion, sulfur is absorbed. Now, unlike your nitrogen, phosphorus and potash, the sulfur is not, it is not mobile. It is rather immobile. It doesn't move very freely from the older leaves to younger leaves. Hence, deficiency symptoms are first noticed in younger leaves, in plants suffering from, or in the crop suffering from what we call sulfate deficiency. Now there are two important amino acids which contain sulfur as an important cysteine and methionine. Cysteine and methionine, these are the two important amino acids. So have the sulfur as an important constant. If sulfur is not present in required quantity, the synthesis or the formation of cysteine and methionine, in addition to that, even vitamin B like thiamine and biotin, also synthesis of them also gets affected. Even glutathione. So glutathione, an important antioxidant that is present in plants also, its synthesis also, its biosynthesis also gets affected. So here I told you phosphorus, the sulfur is very, very essential. I told you because of its immobility, the younger leaves, younger parts are the young growing regions of the plant body suffers, is the first sufferer. Especially this has been thoroughly investigated in Thea sinensis, tea leaves. Tea leaves, the costly and the costly tea is made from what we call young leaves. They contain the the good quality of the tea is thein or caffeine is present in coffee. Thein is an alkaloid that is present in tea. So the thein content is more in young leaves. And even the tea powder made from young leaves cost you high costing, whereas the old ones are the fallen leaves. From that also tea powder or low quality tea is made. So here, in tea gardens, if do not have sulfur in required quantity, the young parts or the tea leaves or the young stem and young stem, main stem and the branches and the leaves get affected. So thereby there is a marked reduction in the tea production. So then we move to magnesium. Of sulfur, we move to magnesium. Magnesium, we have to remember chlorophyll. Now this chlorophyll, in the center of the chlorophyll, tetrapyrrole ring. In the center of the tetrapyrrole ring, you have magnesium ion in the center. So if required quantity of magnesium is not present, means it affects chlorophyll. So when chlorophyll synthesis gets affected, leaves become they turn into yellowish instead of green, because there is no sufficient production of what we call chlorophyll pigment. Hence, the leaf, instead of looking green, it becomes yellowish. So here, a number of enzymes, especially magnesium, is known to affect a number of enzymes that are involved in phosphatic transferase and carboxylic transferase. So the So here, magnesium is an important constituent of various enzymes that are involved in phosphate transferase and carboxylic group transferases. So instead of in addition to that, the magnesium is involved in the synthesis of proteins and also in the lipid synthesis. So if magnesium is not present in the required quantity, these important processes of protein synthesis and also lipid synthesis gets affected, and ultimately it affects the growth and reproduction of the plant body. So now then we move to what we call calcium. Calcium is another important element that is required for the plant in large quantity. Calcium, the two neighboring cells in a cell, in a tissue, so tissue is nothing but a group of cells. And these group of cells are linked together. There is a cementing material, what we call calcium pectate. Calcium pectate is the binding material between two adjacent cells. So if required quantity of calcium is absent, means it affects cell division, the cell differentiation, and ultimately growth and reproduction of the plant. So like this, if it is not present, it has been worked in detail, especially in certain crops, especially in groundnut. In groundnuts, the gynophore, after pollination, the pedicel, of the flower elongates and ultimately sends the young fruit deep into the soil. So for its sending, for the peg formation, for the fruit formation, geocarpic, that fruit formation, required amount of calcium is needed. So hence, generally, the farmers who take up groundnut cultivation are advised to see that their soils do not suffer from calcium deficiency. Hence, agriculture scientists advise these farmers to add gypsum at regular intervals. That gypsum contains, gypsum in calcium sulfate, which has calcium as an important constituent. So hence, farmers are advised to see that their crops or their soils do not suffer from calcium deficiency. So here, the younger parts suffer. Here, the calcium is also rather it makes sluggish movements. Hence, you will see young growing parts are the first sufferers. So the young leaves, instead of standing upright, they bend, they curling will be there. And in addition to this, even the plasma membrane and the tonoplast, their uh, membrane integrity is also under the control of calcium. If calcium is not present in required quantity, it affects cell division, cell differentiation, and also what we call uh, the mitochondrial number in the plant cells, and also uh, transport of starch. And as a result of photosynthesis, starch is produced. Now, this starch that is produced in the leaf has to be translocated to the areas where starch is stored. So, for the transportation also, this calcium is very much needed. Now we move to micronutrients. Under micronutrients, we study about iron, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, boron, and copper, and chlorine. And of course, a recently identified essential nutrient, that is nickel. Okay, so now iron, micronutrients are already needed for chlorophyll synthesis, and also it is very, very essential in various electron transport or electron carriers. These electron carriers, which are very, very important in photosynthesis and also respiration, have, that is ferredoxin and also cytochromes, have iron as an important constituent. So from iron is found in two forms, that is ferrous and ferric. Ferrous is Fe2 plus and ferric is Fe3 plus. So iron, if iron is rather immobile, hence the first symptoms are seen in young leaves, and generally intervenal chlorosis is an important symptom exhibited by the plant suffering from deficiency, and also you will see necrosis. Then we move to manganese. So manganese is absorbed in the form of Mn2 plus, and generally manganese is very, very essential for chlorophyll synthesis and also for the formation of grana. In the chloroplast, we have stroma and grana. For the integrity of this chloroplast, uh, the manganese is very, very essential. Now manganese is very much needed for photolysis. That is, under the influence of light, the water molecule splits into H plus and OH minus. This we call photolysis. So for the enzymes, it acts as an enzyme activator, especially in the enzymes of Krebs cycle enzymes, and also in the DNA and RNA synthesis, the and for coenzyme form, for the coenzyme formation, especially for coenzymatic activity of malic dehydrogenase and isocitrate dehydrogenase, that are very, very important in Krebs cycle, or are regulated by manganese. Now then, molybdenum. Molybdenum is another very, very essential nutrient that is required by the plant in little quantity. So this molybdenum is present especially in nitrogen metabolism, especially in the nitrate reductase. Nitrate reductase that converts nitrates into nitrites. This nitrate reductase has molybdenum as an important constituent. So if molybdenum is not present in required quantity, so these nitrate reductase enzymes activity gets affected and nitrogen metabolism gets affected. So This molybdenum generally, its effect has been studied in crucifers, especially in cauliflower. If cauliflower crop suffers from molybdenum deficiency, it shows what we call whiptail disease. It forms what we call a whiptail disease. Then we move to zinc. Zinc is another important micronutrient. Especially this is very essential for auxin synthesis. Auxin, an important phytohormone. For its synthesis, for the synthesis of auxin, zinc is very important. So for the proper auxin metabolism, required quantity of this zinc is very essential. Now, if a crop suffers from zinc deficiency, especially in case of tomato, in case of brinjal, in case of mustard, sunflower, and cotton, scientists have done a lot of research and found that if these crops, if the soil suffer from this zinc deficiency, they show what we call little leaf disease. So little leaf disease in case of tomato, in case of tobacco, mustard, sunflower, generally is caused by the deficiency of the zinc, because zinc is very essential for the biosynthesis of auxin, a phytohormone. Then we move to copper. Copper is absorbed in the form of cuprous and cupric ion forms. Cuprous and cupric, these are the two important forms. Especially in phosphorylation, in light reactions of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis we'll study later. There are two important stages. One is light reaction, the other is a dark reaction. So in light reactions, for the light reactions, wherein electron transfer or photophosphorylation takes place. For the photophosphorylation, especially for the plastocyanin. At the plastocyanin, the cytochrome oxidase is very important enzyme. For its proper functioning, copper is needed. If plant suffers from copper, generally plastocyanin synthesis and also cytochrome oxidase activity gets affected, and ultimately photophosphorylation gets affected, and the end products of phosphorylation, that is NADP and also ATP formation, gets affected. So, and generally in citrus crops, the copper deficiency has been studied in detail, and if citrus orchards suffer from copper deficiency, they show what we call dieback disease, and also another what we call exudation of gum exudation, which is called exanthema. So the exanthema disease and dieback disease are the two important diseases found in citrus orchards when the orchard suffers from copper deficiency. Then we move to boron. Boron is another very important element that is needed in a little quantity. This boron is very essential for sugar transportation. For the as a result of photosynthesis, the starch and sugars are produced in the leaf, and they have to be translocated to the areas of sink, from source to sink, either to the fruits or to the seeds, or it could be tubers. The transportation of these sugars has to be done. So for the sugar transportation, boron is very essential. The boron combines with sugars, and sugar borates are formed. In that form only, sugars get translocated from source to sink. If plant suffers from boron, then the tubers, size of the tubers gets diminished, because the photosynthates, the sugars and starch that are produced in the leaf, doesn't get translocated. So hence the tubers, the fruits, etc., found to be very small. The last one, this is chlorine, of course. Chlorine is absorbed in the form of chloride ions, Cl minus ions, and generally chloride acts as an enzyme activator, especially the chlorides are important in photolysis. In addition to your manganese, even the chlorine is also very, very essential for the photolysis to take place. And also, like potassium, even chloride ions also very much regulate the stomatal opening and closing. And the last one, of course, is nickel. Nickel, its essentiality has been studied in legumes, especially in case of cowpea. This has been studied in detail by Brown in 1987, and based on his researches, he finally concluded that in addition to the 7 micronutrients, even the nickel can also fall under essential micronutrient. So hence, since then, even nowadays, nickel is also considered as an essential micronutrient. Okay, so now we will learn about what we call hydroponics. Hydroponics is nothing but soilless culture. Nowadays, nowadays it has become, especially the housewives and the people who are interested in raising their vegetables and also flowering plants on the rooftops. They are on the rooftop. They are growing number of crops. So now this hydroponics, this was first done by Sachs and Knopp. Especially the term hydroponics was given by Glerich. They are the German physiologists. So they have first devised a method of growing plants in solution, water solution. To the water they have taken water in a glass stuff, and into that they have added all the essential nutrients that we have discussed just now. 16 to 17 essential nutrients were added to that the water that they have taken into a glass stuff, and into that they have grown a number of plants, especially lettuce, tomatoes, radish, etc. Are grown in glass stuffs in water. So here the root system dips in the water and it absorbs its nutrients from the soil, from the beakers or from the glass stuffs, and ultimately they get translocated to the aerial parts. But here, because these root system is found, dipped in the water always, so the root system likely to suffer from oxygen deficiency. So that's why the water is either circulated or bubbling will be done, wherein introduction of extra oxygen will be done so that root system doesn't suffer from oxygen deficiency. So here regularly the water, we have aquarias, wherein fish, various show fishes are grown. That is the same principle wherein instead of fishes you are growing crops in the glass stuffs having various solutes in required concentration. So this mechanism or method of growing plants in in glass stuffs having solutes. This is otherwise called soilless culture or hydroponics. So as I told you, tomatoes, radish and lettuce are being cultivated on a large scale. So now indicator plants. Now in mineral exploration, generally what the geologists do, they take the soil, they take the rock and analyze. Then they will come to a conclusion that a given metal is present in that particular area. So instead of doing all this, there are certain plants. Their mere presence of that tells you which metal is present in that particular area. Such plants that indicate the presence of given metal in that particular area are called indicator plants. So now, for example, Astragalus and Stanleya are present in the soils where there is a lot of selenium. Of course, Meruga latifolia and Gypsophila patrinii, Basium hornbentii, they are seen growing in the soils which are rich in copper, and Polycarpia sinandra is found to grow in the soils which are rich in lead, and a fern by name Asplenium has been found to grow in an area which is rich in nickel. So these are called indicator plants. So by looking at the concentration of a given plant in a particular area, roughly we can come to a conclusion that a particular mineral, a particular metal is present in large quantity in that particular area. Then metal toxicity. So you have to know about metal toxicity. So nowadays, especially in the towns, generally the leafy vegetables are grown in the effluents. The effluents that coming from either factories or from the household areas, they are rich in all nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, etc. They are very, very rich. Hence, now farmers are using this polluted water to raise various vegetables. Now, if you consume that, there is every possibility, in addition to your essential nutrients, even certain toxic elements such as your lead, cadmium, arsenic are found to are found in large concentrations, which are detrimental to human health. So hence we should take precaution while selecting the vegetables, especially the leafy vegetables, where they are coming from. Okay, so this is about our today's class. Now, I'll give you 5 minutes for your interaction. If you have any doubt regarding yesterday's class or today's mineral nutrition, you can raise your questions. I'll try to answer them. So if you don't have any question, so I'll call it a day, and we will meet, I think you have the timetable with you. Our next class is on 4th. So our next classes are on 4th. We have an 11, 12, and 13. So let us meet on 4th April from 3 to 4. Until then, bye. Thank you for your patient hearing.